Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second pod episode of Bridges to Business. Today, we have with us Daniel Hill, who is the owner and operator of
House Call Personal Training.
Thank you, Dan, for being here.
Of course.
As well as the opportunity to hear about your entrepreneurial journey. What have been your successes? What have been maybe some failures? What you would do if you had to do it over again? So we really appreciate you being here today. So first off, let's talk a little bit about your business, maybe your name again, where you are, what you do, so we can give the viewers a little bit more detail on the business itself.
So my business is at-home personal training. That's the easiest way to put it. And that means I'm going to a person's home, a person's apartment building, a person's office building, where they may or may not have equipment available to them, and basically just doing a personal training session out of there. Personal training being exercise, which what surprised me since I've started is that people will come up and ask me about like dog training and stuff like that because they'll see personal training. And I don't know. I grew up working out. Once I got to here, actually, I was going to the gym. So I just always attached personal training to exercise. So that was kind of a curveball I got. But yeah, at-home personal training. So maybe
another future add-on to the personal training business.
Well, ironically, I found out there's a guy out in Fox Chapel doing that. And he talked about house call training for dogs. And I was like, oh, geez, okay. But yeah, at-home personal training, strength training at home. No matter your ability level, no matter your goals, no matter your background, that's my job, is to show up and just do as much as possible from your house.
How did you, when you began to think about your entrepreneurial journey, how did you conclude that this was what you wanted to do in this particular venue?
Yeah, so there's a bit of a story behind that. Basically, growing up, I was like a very small kid, like very small framed person. I didn't break 100 pounds until sophomore year of high school. So grew up very scrawny, basically. And my dad always had weights.
I did too. Yeah. What the hell happened? Okay.
Well, you and I can talk after this and we'll figure out why. So my dad always had weights in the basement. My mom always walked on a treadmill. So I grew up around parents that exercised. I was just never doing it myself. And around sophomore year of high school, I just got sick and tired of it. And I was like, Dad, I want to lift weights. So we got a little more equipment for the basement. And then I bought Arnold Schwarzenegger's book. I think it's called like The Guide to Modern Bodybuilding. The Encyclopedia to Modern Bodybuilding. I still have it on my bookshelf at home. And just got to work. I just looked up. I was like, what am I supposed to do? Okay, I'll do this. And then it just kind of proceeded in there. I was 16. Now I'm 34. And I pretty much haven't broken that since for 18 years.
That's great.
But basically, the whole lesson there, I say, is to just like, I got my start working out at a home gym where I wasn't standing in front of dozens of people screwing up. I also didn't have access to a car really in high school, so driving to a gym wasn't really feasible. I lived kind of out in the sticks. The facilities just weren't around. So I cut my teeth on fitness working out at home. After I got out of the Marine Corps, my kind of idea was like, I'm just going to go try to work for a 3-letter agency in DC somewhere. That's very common for the job field I was in, for guys that just kind of go that route. So I didn't quite know what I wanted to do with that. So I applied for a master's program up at my hometown, Erie, Pennsylvania at Mercyhurst. And that is a applied intelligence studies program. So you kind of look at it from a law enforcement side, a commercial side, and then a federal side. And I did that with the intention of kind of like seeing where my interest lay there. I had the GI Bill, so it wasn't costing me anything to go at least check things out. Well, I got out of the Marines in 2020, right when the pandemic hit. I had a bunch of money saved up from a deployment because you're not being taxed while you're on deployment, so you're just raking in the cash. And I was like, well, the gyms were all closed, so what am I going to do? Mr. been working out since he's 16, and I'm 30 now, so I started buying gym equipment and putting it into this garage. It was a rental house, so this was a very bad idea because eventually I had to move it all out of there. But I started working out there, and since Erie's my hometown, I had friends hitting me up saying, hey, can I come over and work out there while everything's closed? And I said, yeah, sure. So I had done that in high school for friends. They would come over and work out with me. And now it was happening again after I got out of the military. While I was in the military, sometimes people would ask to work out with me. So it was just kind of this pattern throughout my life.
So kind of like a natural
thing.
natural pathway based on your beginnings in fitness.
Yeah, kind of, yeah, that. So they started doing that, and I figured, like, you know what, I'd finished up my first year of the master's, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna get a personal training certification just to, like, maybe I can make some money back on all this money I put into this equipment, because gym equipment's not cheap, and also during the pandemic, equipment was selling so fast to scalpers, you literally had to, if you didn't check out with your cart in under about a minute, like, everything in your cart would be sold out. So I wasn't buying anything practically, because the hidden cost in buying fitness equipment is shipping. Like, you buy one 45-pound plate, you're talking 20, 30, 40, almost as much in the of the plate just to ship it. So I was ordering stuff piecemeal, and this is all heavy stuff. So I spent thousands of dollars just in shipping costs because I was being so inefficient with my ordering, because I had to be. It was like, if I just waited for everything to be in stock, I never would have had anything. So I was trying to make some of that back. So I started training friends, and I was like, I really enjoy this. And my interest in doing any of the other stuff was kind of waning. And second year of the master's is no joke. You have to start your thesis. Your thesis is, I mean,
correct.
It is a huge
Trust me, yes.
Huge undertaking. And I was like, I shouldn't go into a thesis half-cocked. Like, I either am going to do this or I'm not. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to roll the dice and just back out of that program. But I was also too afraid still to fully commit to personal training, because I was like, a lot of them don't make a lot of money, and they quit after a year or two, because right after college, I actually worked at an LA Fitness for almost a year in sales as a personal training salesman.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a trainer, I was a salesman, but during that time I saw training staff just churning all the time. So I was nervous. So I was like, well, how can I hedge my bets and do something that's proximal to personal training? That was when physical therapy popped up into my head, because even my friends who were late 20s, early 30s, I would just assume they could do something like a squat. And they're like, no, my knees hurt when I do this, or my shoulder hurts when I do this, or my hip hurts when I do this. And I was like, okay, so this isn't as simple as like just going in and telling someone, do a squat, do a lunge, do a bench press, and you're done. No, there's probably other stuff messed up. And I actually just ended up like playing like back alley physical therapist, looking up all this stuff and be like, okay, I think we have to do this and this won't hurt anymore. And that was working. And that was entertaining to me. I enjoyed doing that, because it meant just moving out all the stuff that people say stops them and keeps them stuck. I was like, here's a way through. So I was like, well, Pitt's the #1 physical therapy school in America, tied with another university. I don't remember which one, but I'm like, that's 2 hours away. I'll apply to see if I can get in. And I went and talked to the department. I needed all these prerequisites, because my background was when I came to Duquesne, I was a journalism student. That was in 2008. So I had nothing like that would have gotten me into PT school. Well, I've never been a strong science or math student. I was never interested in those topics, but you needed all of those as prerequisites to get into physical therapy. So I applied to Pitt as a general studies student just to get prereqs, and I had this idea in my head that I was going to get all of them done in 2 semesters. You're talking physics, biology, chemistry, physiology with labs, 2 courses in each. And I was like, I'll just take 4 in a semester. What's the big deal? Like, I did special operations in the Marine Corps. Like, more than 50% of anyone who goes into those selections gets washed out. So I was like, if I can do that, I can sit and study for 12 hours a day. I'll just muscle through it. Well, I only lasted a month. And I got to my first round of tests, and I was like, I'm going to fail all of these. I was going to tutors. I was staying up until 1, 2 in the morning, studying, and like I couldn't get any of it into my head. So I was like, all right, I'm going to waste my GI Bill if I continue going this way, because I was right up until the drop phase. So I was like, I got to drop out. I got to drop out, reevaluate. And that was fall 2021. And at that point, I was like, I need a plan. And I was certified as a personal trainer. So there was this guy who managed the LA Fitness I worked for back in 2013, he'd opened his own gym here in Pittsburgh, Shape Training. And I just walked in there. I was like, hey, Yard, remember me? He's like, oh yeah. I was like, can I work here? And that was how I got started professionally doing it. Well, after about a year there, I was just like, I really want to do this for myself because I see an opportunity somewhere and I want to just make more money in a way that can actually, like, the way I was working then, I was like, there's no way to sustain this long term. I'm going to have to exit this at some point, which I didn't want to do. And that was when I went back to my original thinking of like, maybe I can train people out of their homes. And then I started thinking, how can I do this? I was thinking of getting a van and taking some of my equipment and putting it in the van and then pulling it out. But I was looking up vans. Vans were like $60,000, $70,000. And Amazon, frankly, buys all those out all the time. Like I don't remember, like the Ford Transit, the Chevy Express, Amazon will come in every year and just grab all of those. And all that leaves is a bunch of busted up used ones with like 100,000 miles on them. So I was like, there was a roadblock. And I kept trying to think of a way to do this. And then I was like, well, if I just buy a pair of adjustable dumbbells, I can bring those in and out. They'll be heavy, but I can do it. And I bought some resistance bands and I took out an LLC because I was training a lawyer at the time. And he was like, hey, I'll just I'll file it for you. You're a veteran. Yeah. I'll do it for you for free. Nice. And if you need me for anything, I'll come back and help you. Nice. So I was like, okay. I thought up a name, House Call Personal Training, because I looked up other at-home personal training services and the name just wasn't, it didn't tell you that that's what they did. I'm not going to name them, but like, I was like, okay, so there's a hole in the market where there's not only not a lot of people doing this, but if you just saw their name in the search results, you wouldn't even know that's what they did. So I'm just going to like take a name, make it very simple, make anyone who looks for at-home personal training, they see my name and they're like, that's it. So I took out the LLC. I grabbed the web domain while I could. I didn't do anything else beyond that yet, but I just started there. Got the equipment and I sat on that for about 6 months while I kept working my job and just thinking like, how am I going to get my first client? And I went to a friend's baby shower. No, baptism. It was a friend's first child's baptism. And I hadn't seen him in probably 5-6 years, but he'd put on a ton of weight. And I was like, man, what are you doing? Are you okay? Like, do you need help? He's like, yeah, man, I need help. I'm like, this is not good. He had some other health issues going on, his complications of the weight. Right. I was like, let's just get on the phone and talk. And I was very nervous going into that because when I thought up the pricing structure for my business, I was setting up pricing in terms of how am I going to scale this and pay top quality trainers to stay, because that's a big part of the churn in gyms is people just aren't making any money. Right. It's very hard to raise a family and work for another company as a trainer.
So basically, how could you do this to differentiate yourself because you want to keep consistent staff?
Yes.
Because I think that's where I think from a personal perspective, when I would go to work out, it would always be like, it was like a turnstile. And you never really had anybody where you developed any kind of a relationship with.
Exactly, and it's a relationship-based business. You first of all, there's like so much trust involved in having someone train you at all, whether it's a gym or anywhere else. But there also has to be the trust you're bringing someone into your home on a consistent basis. Like people have children. Right. Some of my clients are very wealthy, and like they don't even like talking about their lives. They don't. They're putting an enormous amount of trust on you. Some give me like their garage door codes to like let myself in. So it's like, you can't have churn in that environment. So what I was like, well, I'm going to have to charge a lot. Like that's just going to be the way it is, because how am I going to pay a trainer well if I am only charging a little bit? And I think that's the biggest mistake the fitness industry makes, is they undervalue personal training and they don't value it enough, and therefore they can't pay their trainers enough to keep them on staff. Right. But I don't think personally, like without actually digging into it, I just don't think big box gyms think that way. So that's just the nature.
So how did you come to this Duquesne SBDC? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I'd gotten my first client. He signed up. I like couldn't believe it. It was like the most I'd ever sold. I sold a $4,800 training agreement over the phone in like 20 minutes. Granted, I knew him, but like that's a lot of trust to put on someone.
Yeah.
And so I got him, I got another one, and it was a referral from someone I trained at the gym. And at that point I was just like, what do I need to do? Because like I didn't know anything about really running a business. And I came here originally to figure out what should I do next. I was like, I had a few clients, but my objective is I want to scale this, and within 7 to 10 years just be, if not having been able to sell the business, at least be out of the training aspect and running the business instead of working in the business.
Were there any thoughts at that point, futuristically, where you thought maybe you would expand it, you'd maybe franchise, or were any thoughts along those lines?
That's been my objective from the start.
That's been the objective.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't want to be the guy who runs his business single-handedly for like 50 or 60 years and then gets out at the end and like that's it. I'm not really interested in that. I want to actually just build the business, create something that can start not running itself, but where I'm not doing the training still.
Gotcha.
I think my interests lie more in like everything outside of that. Like, how do you make it efficient? How do you bring it to other markets? Things like that.
So you kind of, at some point futuristically, want to grow the business where you're in a position to be in the more, I would say, strategic end.
Yeah.
Where you're thinking futuristic, you're thinking the future, growth, development, as opposed to the day-to-day operations. Is that a fair assessment based on what you just said?
And it's not that I feel like there's nothing more to learn about personal training. Like we still don't even understand why the body builds muscle. We don't even have we understand the mechanism, but we don't understand the why necessarily. So like there's still more to learn, but ultimately like you get in, you see what a person's challenges are, and there's a lot of ways we know to work around those already. So that's become kind of systematic for me. But where I find my mind drifting all the time is working on brand deals where, say, someone puts X amount of equipment in their cart and sends it to X zip code. They automatically get an offer for an introductory training session with us. And we're talking brands that service the entire country, or getting deals with apartment buildings, or getting deals with corporate gyms and just plugging trainers in there. It's ways to have your own gym without actually opening a gym. That's really what I'm thinking of, is staffing gyms, not actually owning a brick and mortar gym. And I'm interested in working on that, but no one of those people are going to talk to me when I'm just like a little pipsqueak still. So like I've got to be big enough for them to be like, oh, this person's worth paying attention to.
So you have your short term. So you've got your short term stance, and then obviously now you're talking about long term. So specifically, what did the Duquesne SBDC? What did we help you with? Where do we get you from point A to point B?
So I came in wondering, and I don't remember all the specifics, but I was just like, what should I be doing now? Should I be trying to pursue paid ads? Should I be trying to, what should I be looking at buying systematically, like equipment that I might need to run the business side, not the training side? I asked, like, do you think it's worth going to this fitness expo? And we looked at, like, strategically, what are these moves actually accomplishing? And are they in alignment with where you are now? So, for example, a lot of my clientele uses Apple products, and sometimes my clientele has to send videos of a technique. So when people travel, I program for them while they travel so that they can stay on task. But if they have to send me a video, if you go Apple to Android or Android to Apple, it just destroys the quality of the video. And I want to make my whole idea of my business is keep things as simple as possible for people. So if I'm telling people, they already download an app to run all the training out of, and I don't want to say also, let's also download WhatsApp, let's also download Telegram so that we can send data like videos to each other. That's just extra stuff. And my clients are already 55 to 75 years old on average. The ones who are savvy are, the ones who aren't will never download an app.
Correct.
If you like held them at gunpoint. So I needed to keep it simple, and I just did the numbers, and I was like, I should buy an iPhone. And they were like, well, is this really doing anything for you outside of this? So it was discussions like that.
So helping to validate, kind of being a third party, objective other, to validate, not validate.
Exactly.
Guide you through that process.
I was looking at getting a van still at that time. But then we were like, well, if you buy a van, this means you have to buy all your employees a van. If you have to buy all your employees a van, now you have to insure those vans, you have to maintenance those vans, you have to stockpile those vans. 20% of cars are broken into every year. Only 3% of homes are broken into every year. So if you're talking about where you're storing your equipment, I would sooner store my equipment in someone's home instead of in a van that might be broken into. Well, now you hire people and you have to make sure that they don't have a bad driving record. It creates all of this extra.
So having that third party validation, whether it would be in agreement with you or telling you this probably is not the greatest idea.
Exactly.
Seemed, as from what I can gather from our conversation, to be very helpful.
So I came in with a list of things that I thought might be a good idea for the company. And I said, what do you think of this list of things? Now, I worked with Allison Howard,
Yes.
who recently
Yes,
left,
yes.
but she wasn't in personal training, but she has run a business. So it's
Right.
like, okay, let's look at each one of these decisions and say, what are your current goals and how does acting on this particular decision actually align with those? And she was challenging, like, do you think it's a good idea to spend $8,500 on a suite of Apple products for your business right now? Like, do you think that's actually, given that your current goal is X,
Right.
does this move you towards that or further away from it or not at all? Do you think buying a van actually helps with this? Do you think this actually helps with it? And that was where we really leaned into which was great. Most of them were bad ideas. So it was like, that meant my life was easier because I really only had to do one thing, which was work on better referral programs, because that's where most of my traffic's been coming from. And that's why I'm leaning so much into getting my clients this led me to say, I need my clients to leave me reviews if they had a good experience. I got to do that because otherwise I'm going to have a very hard time validating paid ads to funnel people towards a business with no testimonials and then ask them for $8,900 over the phone when I pitch them on my services.
So when you look at the business today, what would you say if you had the magic wand?
Yeah.
What would you say if I had to do it over, I would not have done what?
I wouldn't have done. I ran a couple paid ads just without much information, so that was kind of money down the drain. I don't look at anything as a abject failure. Like, as long as you learn from it, it's just another. It's a process of elimination. So if I fail at something and I reflect on it and I can identify what I did wrong, that's good.
Yes.
Right? So even if I bankrupted the company, which I hadn't, I can start again. I'll find a way. I'll try again.
Did you find after coming here and using the services of the SBDC, were those services able to help you make more informed decisions?
Yeah.
And the reason I ask that is, at the end of the day, what we kind of say is our mission, besides grow, prosper, and thrive, is our clients making informed decisions. That's what I hope all of us are able to do. Are we helping you make informed decisions? We often say to clients, I'm not your boss.
Yeah.
I'm only your consultant. You could tell us, bye-bye, but we're going to tell you what you want to hear. Now, we're going to tell you what you need to know, not what you want to hear. So along that construct, did you feel that was the path we were taking you on?
Yeah, the most recent example of that was, once again, Allison, right before she left. I came in the spring because she's like, well, you're about to be offloaded as a client because you haven't been in a while. Because really, I'd gotten what I needed. I needed to eliminate from a list of objectives which ones were worth pursuing, which ones weren't. But then another opportunity popped up, which was the Pittsburgh Fitness Expo. And I was like, there were booths available, and they have the demographics available on there. A lot of high earning people in my demographic, most from in-state, a lot from Pittsburgh, not a bunch of out-of-staters necessarily, which aren't useful to me from that perspective.
Well, maybe not yet.
Not yet. But I was ready to buy a booth, but that was, when I really did, like, the booth was $1,200 or $2,000, which I had. That wasn't a problem. But then when I really started doing the numbers, it's like, well, I need pamphlets, I need cards, so really it became like a $5,000 investment plus time.
Right.
So at that point, I came in and I said, do you think this is a good idea? And, we ultimately decided it wasn't, because it's like, well, what happens? You get 10 people that want to sign up. Best case scenario, you can't handle 10 more people. You only have one employee who's working part-time. So it's like, yeah, you might get an influx of people, but then those people might be turned on to this idea of at-home personal training, and then you end up just sending them to your competition because they're like, well, he had no room, so I'm going to go elsewhere.
So the whole adage of what we call the sandwich, you know, you're ready to grow, but you've got to spend money in order to make money.
Yeah.
So anybody in a service business, using my own consulting company, in my own experiences, I was so concerned, so worried about having to tap into my line of credit. I did not want to start to have any debt. Well, I could only do so many clients, right? So then I had to hire, but then I had to hire in advance of getting the clients. So, but once it starts, like once you kind of get through the gap period, say the first 6 months or a year, it's kind of balancing between debt and revenue.
Yeah.
Debt and revenue.
And
you have to know when it's right to do that.
And that's my current thing I'm working on, is working on hiring, because I hired one person and she's awesome. She's renewed a couple of the clients. The clients all love her. Frankly, I barely hear a peep, and that's good to me. I'm anti-meeting. I spent the Marine Corps. There was always meetings. A couple of jobs I had, there were meetings, and I'm like, I'm getting nothing out of these, and I could be training right now. I thought we were here to train and make money, training and helping people, not this. So I don't do a lot of that, and I don't hear much from her outside of a couple, she sends an update once a week via email. So she's awesome, but she can't give me all her hours. I can't ask for all her hours either because I'm paying her by the session. So it's like, I need to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to pre-sell people for the next 3 months and then work on hiring someone to meet that need in those 3 months? Like what? So that's my current thing I'm working on, is how do I get that next trainer?
Hopefully we can help you with that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And kind of start looking at a couple of different, because what you want to do is you want to look at your cash flow. And then we just start playing around with the incremental increase in staffing, with where you think the revenue is going to kind of come in. And again, I'm assuming you bill. Are you a billable service, or do you expect payment like the day of service, or do you have different payment methodologies?
I give people 2 options, so they can pay in full up front and get 5% off, or I just call it an installment plan. You pay every 4 weeks. So that's something I do differently than the rest of the fitness industry, which bills monthly. The problem is we are a service-based industry based on actually delivering hourly service each week. Well, months don't pan out evenly. So what I found was people who signed up for a one-time-a-week program for a year were getting 48 sessions, not 52. So I bill every 4 weeks if they want to do it that way, and everything's broken down into 4-week increments instead of monthly increments, because they just don't work for the way this business works. But yeah, basically to answer your question.
Dan, let me ask you, what advice would you give to any emerging entrepreneur? What advice? Someone would come to you and say, I'm thinking about starting a business. What would be your words of wisdom to any individual who might ask you that question?
So, not all of this is going to be from me. Some of this is just stuff I took from podcasts. Some might be from me. So stuff I got from podcasts or other entrepreneurs. One person I love is Alex Hormozy. He's kind of controversial because he's very just like philosophical and saying like, you do the work or you don't, and you're successful or you're not, whatever. But the biggest thing I took from him was, and a lot of people go about this backwards, is find something you're good at and sell that to the wealthy first, because it's much less expensive and sustainable to sell a couple whales as opposed to trying to scale. Scaling is extremely expensive and prohibitively expensive for many. And that's why a lot of people tank, is because they're not confident in their product or their service yet. And so they try to commoditize it and undersell rather than build something good and then sell it at a premium. So that was the first thing I did. I was like, premium pricing up front, because I can't be a volume-based business because I have to drive places. Unless you hit the lottery and you find an entire neighborhood where you're just bouncing between homes, which has not happened yet for me, you're gonna need to offset that driving time. So that was the first thing I said was, be resourceful, look around at what you have, look at the skills you have, and find one of those that very narrowly fits a niche and go with that. Don't try something new.
Right.
Don't try something new outside of something you don't know.
Good.
Don't go there. Don't try to do something that's going to require you to scale. If you can avoid having to rent anything, if you can avoid having to sign a lease, avoid it. Avoid setting up things that are going to require monthly payments from you. Try to buy something that you pay for once, and then you just keep using that thing over and over again. Because
So you say scale on success, scale on an incremental basis.
yeah,
Have a core expertise, core differential in terms of what your services are.
yep,
And then it sounds as though from what you've indicated today to date, then use that incremental process to begin to scale up.
exactly. That's the pursuit I've been going so far, and it seems to be working. I don't know if it's worked yet. I've only been going for about 2 years, so I can't say whether or not it's worked yet. Most businesses fail after 3 or 5, so
3 to 5 failures.
I haven't passed that test yet.
Okay.
But the other piece was I started this part-time. So I did not just have the inspiration and I quit my job and I'm going to go do this. I think there is something to be said for putting pressure on yourself, because without that pressure, there's really not motivation to move forward. But on the other hand, throwing all of your eggs into the basket might put you in a position where the pressure is so much that it just becomes stress. And when you're stressed out all the time, you're not going to perform. Whether that's at selling, because you're going to be putting everything on this one sale, or at actually delivering your service,
Exactly.
because you're so worried about executing properly to maintain clients or nurture repeat customers, whatever your business is.
I think you're absolutely hit it right on the head. Looking at my own consulting business, I was the same thing, right? It was me, myself.
Yeah.
Then I was doing the consulting, I was building the clientele, trying to manage the business. When did I hire? When did I not hire? And you realize, you've got to get to some point where you've got to spend a little money to make money. But at the same time, I was able to, build that brand. I mean, I was at a point where, I had clientele, the word was out there. I was growing. I tell clients all the time, and certainly not to sound like I'm a philosopher by any stretch of the imagination, but I tell clients all the time, a vision without action, pencil in hand,
Mm-hmm.
is a daydream. And conversely, you can have all of the action and not a vision, and that can be chaos. So, how do you blend? Where am I today? Where do I ultimately want to be? And then what are the steps and the resources to ultimately get there? Well, it certainly sounds like you've done that.
Yeah.
You certainly sound like you've been successful. And I'm very glad that, we have you as a client here at our SBDC.
Yeah, and I have to say I appreciate all the help. I have to also mention Tyler, who came on site to some of my clients' homes and filmed an ad just to get something up there that's a little more professional than me shooting something on my iPhone. So that's also been a huge help and something that people don't always think to ask for. So if you're coming to the Small Business
Please.
Development Center and you need photo or video, don't hesitate to ask.
And thank you very much. We're very pleased with offering that service
Mhm.
here, and certainly the talent and expertise that Tyler brings
Yeah.
to the program. But from a strategic perspective, we began to think as a team, the days of this type of marketing, door-to-door marketing in an e-commerce age is basically Neanderthal. So what is it that we can do to try to get into what we call the more outbound marketing, digital marketing? And hence that was when we thought about a media center, creating a video media center, which now for about 2 years we have into place. So
Yeah.
any client here at the SBDC gets that service. So again, thank you for your compliments on that service, and more importantly, thank you for being with us here today. And I'd like to thank all of you for participating in our second podcast. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very,
you.
very much. Thank you.
Yeah.